So definitely, you guys are all going through some changes too. Somebody here is definitely going through a change. Now, typically, I would read the side as you, Virgo, as my, that's just how I do my soulmate investigation reads, for clients. But since this is just since this is just a reading for you guys on YouTube, or this is the same kind of reading for YouTube, but this side may not resonate with you. The other side may. Go ahead and switch sides if it works best. But we start off with the mind plane first, and typically what I would do is kind of give like a summary of what I see in this reading, and kind of before we get started. But I'm ready to jump in right into this because you've got defensive energy here, not really wanting things to kind of, not necessarily not wanting things to change, but you're standing your ground, you're kind of remaining strong, and you're kind of changing a lot of your not just your opinions, your stances, your boundaries. You're changing things fundamentally about yourselves, to the point where you guys feel like, not necessarily feel like any. Well, you're feeling defensive, honestly, because these are pieces of you guys that are fundamentally like you guys. Like, this is representing a representative of you, Virgos. I think this is both. This for both people. I think it's for the betterment of the dynamic of the relationship, though. But you have defensive energy that's coming up in here. But as I was saying, going in with this reading here, we're starting with the mental area, which is, how you guys both think of this relationship, which you have the Knight of Pentacles and the Seven of Pentacles. Now, if this is you, Virgo, this is your card anyway. I like that you have, this is you. You're thinking like yourself, taking your time, taking it slow, looking closely at the details. Some of you guys may be finding this relationship slow, something that is a work in progress. I think you guys are really taking your time to really put in foundation, or really put in some hardcore values into this relationship, or you're trying to figure out or trying to assess what do you find of value in this relationship, or if you find anything to be, necessary for change. Of course, you have look at your patterns in relationships. So I feel like for some of you guys, you're taking time out to really be thorough in regards to what needs to change on your behalf, or what needs to change on the other person's behalf, only for you, for there to be harmony. Now, the other person has the Seven of Pentacles, so it looks like this person here is looking at how far this relationship has come, how far they've come in this relationship, how much they've changed, how things have progressed, and I feel like they still see that there's a lot of work that's needed for this relationship to be as good as it should be. Because honestly, guys, if there's going to be a dynamic change, someone has got to give of themselves. And I feel like this person may not be seeing the situation being as balanced as they need to. Not that you are the person that needs to change, but they perhaps see that they need things to differ, or some things to change on their behalf too. Now, the interesting thing is the challenge is the Five of Swords. Now, the situation that we're coming up with regarding the Five of Swords is like there is this feeling of compromise, or just there's the lack of compromise, or there is the challenge that you face is like not really or getting something out of a situation, making sure that you're getting what you want, getting at something out of your circumstance. And I kind of feel like with you guys right now, or with your soulmate and everything, there may not be a lot of eye to eye. There may be a lot of petty arguments that kind of go too far, that really don't need to be, had, especially if they're just petty, something small, nothing really serious. And I feel like somebody feels like they either owe someone an apology, or someone owes them an apology. That doesn't, have to be, all the way around. It could just simply be that this person, wants things to be balanced and needs things to be in harmony, because right now there's some things that are offset that needs to have some sort of something needs to be amended, rather. Now, I do feel like this person may be seeing that this relationship is, they've come a long way with this relationship. They've worked really hard for this relationship, and therefore they do feel like they need to, they've been putting in a lot, and they just want some sort of either reciprocation, or like they want, they're not quite satisfied with how, with where they are, despite how much work they put in. which is why they perhaps feel like there is a need for things to be balanced out a little differently. Now, on your end, or if this is the other person, if you don't identify with this side, this here judgment does indicate here that you're going through a change because you have gone through a situation very similar to this before. This talks about you guys taking the time out to reflect, to look back, to see how much you've changed, how much you've adjusted, how much you don't really resonate with how this is going, how this routine has been, or how you have, and how much you would like to keep and maintain some of these things. But there, you're ultimately going through a transition yourself. You're taking notes of the relationship, of what you like and don't like, what you find valuable and what you don't find valuable. You're really taking the time out to really figure out what needs to change within yourself, because this is a time, I think you're giving this relationship, a time of review to figure out if this is something that either you're in or you're out with. Because the Knight of Pentacles is not necessarily committed to anything, even though when he does commit, he's super into it. He's going to work his butt off. I'm not saying that you guys haven't committed to this, but you guys are really looking at the details before you decide to say, hey, this is something I'm all in for. What got you guys together is a commitment, okay? What the thing that we're looking at here that brought you two together was commitment, was routine, was the same sort of core values. For some of you guys, there was an age difference, or there was a difference in religion, or sex, or or whatever, right? There's a lot of things that are different about you two, and there was a lot of similarities about you two that I think brought you together. Because the reason, definitely similarities, because of the Two of Cups. You guys, this person sees you as the person that mirrors them, pretty much the same individual. Like, you guys are like practically a one person. Because the Two of Cups, for me, when I see the Two of Cups, I always see that as like the mirror, the person that mimics the other. Someone that has very similar feelings, similar thoughts, similar ideas. They're very similar to one another. They're practically mirrors. They're not twin flames, but they're very similar to one another. They work well together, and they're very compatible. But of course, what you see in the other person, you see in yourself. So I feel like this person here that's why I kind of said, like, this person doesn't believe that this person just, owes that person an apology or whatever. They think there's universally regarding this relationship, there's a need for a whole revamp of what's dynamic, of balance in this relationship. Who needs to do what and why, or pretty much everybody needs to kind of take some sort of responsibility for the relationship, and why it isn't going, why it's difficult, or why it's or why it's not harmonious, and pretty much take arms in regards to making the relationship balance. So both parties don't, I think this person feels like that you could do something differently, as well as they could do something differently. Not that they're in the right and you're in the wrong, because I don't feel that way. Not that, because I just don't get it with this energy. But again, I do see this situation for you guys as like a review. Like, you're looking at this a lot closely. You're looking at this like, you're trying to really be sure, like, if this is something that you really want to continue with. Some of you guys, this is like recognizing how much you've changed, how much you've grown, recognizing how much you've progressed from a situation very similar to this in the past, and how you're going to handle it differently. Right now, you're taking, I think you're being called to action at this moment based off of who you are now, not who you were, and where your stances are now. And the reason why we're looking at the situation, looking at, like, the reason why your body, or excuse me, why you're being perceived as judgment, and your mindset is the Knight of Pentacles, is because of the Six of Swords. And this talks about transitioning, leaving something old and moving on to something new, embracing a new beginning. And I feel like for a lot of you guys are taking that transition. You're traveling, you're moving on from something old and embracing something new, which is what this judgment is here, right? You're aware of what you're moving away from, or you're aware of what you've moved away from, period. And you're taking this opportunity, this situation that's fallen on your lap. You're taking note of what you're doing differently, of what to do differently. So there's a lot of changes, lots of transitions here, and you're doing the best that you can with it. And I feel like you paying attention to what you're doing is practically what this what this card is saying. Looking at your pattern relationships, you're kind of already doing that. You're already taking note, but you have to pay attention to your patterns, not the other person's. It's of course understandable to kind of get an idea, to pay attention to the other person, not to force them to change themselves, but to come up with what you believe is true for you. What is your stance? What do you believe what is your ideal relationship? What is your ideal partner? Do you see your partner doing these things? And if that isn't the case, you have to shape your boundaries around that, not to force the other person or manipulate or else, give that person an ultimatum saying, hey, you need to change your X, Y, and Z. Not like to make them change because you can. More of like, you're not that person that's going to tolerate any of that kind of behavior anymore. Not because they're bad people, not because they're doing something wrong to you. It's just that you don't find this to be what you want or what you feel you deserve anymore. And that this person here is kind of very much the same. They're trying to figure out what works for them, what doesn't work for them. But they see themselves in you, and and I think the reason why they have justice as how they perceive themselves, and the Seven of Pentacles as their mindset. They have the Two of Cups, so they see this relationship as a perfect connection. This is the perfect union. It doesn't have to be like this is a romantic card. This could be that you guys connected on a very platonic level and you guys get each other on a very fundamental basis. So it's like this person feels like even though there's a lot of imbalance, there is something that's unified between you and them. I think this person is committed to you in the sense of like marriage or something, like, or somebody wants to propose. Someone feels like this work that they put into this relationship hasn't gotten to the point, either like, okay, I gotta slow down. I think the point of this relationship, point of this person's, placement being justice, is that they feel like where they are in this relationship is practically marriage. I think they are acting as if they are your partner, like a longtime partner. I think somebody even proposed, and this is why you're trying to figure out whether or not this is something you actually want to commit 100% to, which is probably why this is like, we don't know. You're not necessarily like, you're not necessarily rejecting it, but you're not quite sure if this is something you want to jump 2 feet into, which explains the, defensiveness, the Seven of Wands, or the Knight of Wands, rather. It really explains it. And it's not because you don't want that thing. You don't want to be married, or you don't want to be in a committed relationship, or you don't want to pursue something with this person. It's more like you're just cautious. You're cautious. This is the Knight of Pentacles. He's always cautious, always taking one step at a time, being very thorough because he doesn't want to mess up. He doesn't want to, be, shocked and surprised. He wants to be prepared and know what he's going into. And I feel like that's, with the Five of Swords rather, gosh, the Five of Swords being in the challenge is kind of doing and making sure that you are being considered in everything. Making sure that you're getting something out of it. And I think the challenge mostly is also, I kind of get this feeling as it's like compromising, but not really. It's like making sure that you get exactly what you want based off of, what you believe, but also understanding that, there's certain, just making sure that what you want is worth perhaps severing connections, or if it's truly that big of a deal that you must have, like knowing what you deserve, and at the same time knowing that, in asking something from someone that isn't really fair for them, if that makes sense. But I feel like for Five of Swords really being the challenge, it's like fighting through and, getting what you want, making, doing the best that you can with what you got. And really with the Five of Swords, it's so weird to have that as a challenge. I might even get a card for that too, because what brought you guys together was committing to each other. And now the thing that's different, the challenge that you're facing is being selfish. I think some of you guys are always considering someone else, always considering other people, and I think you may have to just be selfish with this. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to. I don't really know if I should say, because this whole situation is about working together, or the situation is about looking at your pattern in relationships. I think the reason why the Five of Swords is coming up is like not putting yourself second because you're in a relationship. Like recognizing that you are the person that comes first in every relationship. And that you have to make sure that you're taken care of before the other person is, only because the only person that's going to really look out for you is you. No matter what kind of dynamic your relationship is in, never putting yourself in a position where you're codependent, but to really make sure that you are being looked out for. And I think this is why this whole review thing is coming up, because you're gonna have to take a stand for yourself. Really interesting read this time, Virgo. I know it felt like it was a little bit all over the place. It's big messages, and it's just been a crazy week for me. So I do appreciate you guys bearing with me. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this remaining energy. I mean, at the whispers of wisdom of the oracle. Goodness. You guys have new life. I like that. So new life, it talks about a new opportunity, new things coming into your life. This is about a situation where, of course, right, you're having to look at something and take action on it. But new life does talk about there being a new journey, a new beginning. And it could be with another person. And I think it's been a long time coming for a lot of you guys. You guys have been working very hard for this. You haven't given up. You've been tired, though. And I think this is the judgment period. This is the time where you have to say yes or no. Do you accept this new beginning or not? Is this aligning with you and what you believe you deserve, what you believe that you want, or no? And I feel like that's why new life is so important right now. I think the reason why new life is coming up in your reading at all is because you are being introduced to something brand new. And of course, with your cautiousness, you want to be sure that this is exactly what you want. But if things haven't been balanced, like I said before, if things haven't been going in the way that you feel like they should, if there has been some things that you had to kind of change or alter, or there has been some things in your life that really don't really make sense between you and this person, it's not the other person's fault, if that makes sense. Like, it's not your fault either. The focus should always be on yourself, on what you need to change about yourself, what needs to change about your boundaries, what needs to change about what you tolerate, not about what that person needs to do differently. There's only so much that only so much that you can do. You can't control them. So that's why it's so important that the patterns are based on you. The focus should be based on you, never the other person. Because you're starting, but ultimately, I don't see anything wrong. I don't see anything bad. I think ultimately there's just some things that need to be sorted out, but only in regards to what you allow and what you don't. But I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go.